Welcome back to Normal Island. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm joined by the superb Aidan, aka Goatmeal. How are you this evening?
Very, very well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And we were just speaking backstage. We were speaking about your setup. I love it. I love the brick wall. I love the lighting.
Yeah, I was saying it's kind of like garage chic a little bit.
Next show, I'm going to have brick behind my wall, and you're going to accuse me of copying you. Sharing is caring. But anyway, we've got a really big show coming up for you tonight. Jeremy Corbyn refuses to call himself an anti-Zionist. US school shooter starts another trans panic. And the Co-op launches Palestinian beer. As always, remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit that button. We'll, of course, be getting to your comments at the end. So make sure you're busy in chat, as you will be. But on to our first story. A video has surfaced of Jeremy Corbyn refusing to answer the question on whether he is an anti-Zionist. Let's take a look at the video.
And declaring yourself as an anti-Zionist? No, I'm just an activist. I'm an activist. I just want to know as a member of the party.
I'm here to speak for Palestinian people and speak in solidarity with them. That's the point of being here today. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
Now, that video was posted by Spinwatch on Instagram. The person asking the question in the video is an activist who goes by Annie Says on the social media platform. Now, there have been some divisions going on within this, divisions that could pose a problem in the future. Some people have taken to Twitter to side with Corbyn, others have attacked him. This is simply unacceptable from Jeremy Corbyn. The reality is, he refused to call himself an anti-Zionist because he isn't one. Corbyn supports the existence of a Jewish supremacist state in historic Palestine. That should invalidate him being leader of the new party. People are really purity testing Jeremy Corbyn now. All I can say is if Corbyn isn't pure enough for you, enjoy Farage, lads, because that's your alternative. Saddens me to see people I respect criticise Jeremy Corbyn for the wrong reasons. The left is mobilising, organising and building the foundations of what could be the biggest anti-establishment movement in Europe. Jeremy is not the enemy, comrades, he's an ally, always has been. United we stand, divided we fall. Bear that in mind. Now, I think if you want to criticise... Excuse me, I'll start that again. I think if you want to criticise Corbyn, that's fair enough. I mean, no one's perfect. But I do take issue from Kazmi's tweet saying that he supports a Jewish supremacist state. I mean, he's been an anti-racist his whole life. He's opposed apartheid in South Africa. So why would he support one in Israel? Now, this article from 2018 may provide some context. Jeremy Corbyn has defended comments he made about a group of British Zionists having no sense of irony, saying he is careful with language now. A 2013 clip was posted by the Daily Mail as the Labour leader works to tackle anti-Semitism in his party. Luciana Berger, a Jewish Labour MP, has said hearing Mr Corbyn's speech made her feel unwelcome in the party. Mr Corbyn said he used the term Zionist in an accurate political sense and not as euphemism for Jewish people. I am now more careful with how I might use the term Zionist because a once self-identifying political term has been increasingly hijacked by anti-Semites as code for Jews. Now, my view on this is that Jeremy Corbyn is definitely an anti-Zionist. I think anyone accusing him of being a Zionist probably needs to give their heads a wobble. He stood with the Palestinian people for decades, but I think he's too cautious. Now, he has been smeared over and over again for years, and I think he's somewhat defensive. I don't think he wants to give certain headlines. Refusing to say whether he's a Zionist or not concurs with the quotes where he wants to be more careful with the term. But having said that, he was leader of the Labour Party. He isn't anymore. So even though I don't believe for 1 second that he's a Zionist, I think he needs to stop being so cautious. When Zara Sultana was asked, she unequivocally said she was an anti-Zionist. The time for being cautious is over, and the new party needs to firmly establish themselves as an anti-Zionist party. Aidan, what are your thoughts on this? I think it's unfortunate that Corbyn isn't more forthcoming, But that doesn't lead me to think that he's a supporter of an ethnic state. Maybe you disagree. I mean, maybe you think this is actually a major red flag.
I think it's potentially a major red flag with Corbyn because he's famously, not so great at marketing himself. And I think it's almost like he's learning the lesson that he needs to get better at doing that and stop kind of falling for quite obvious traps. And so in doing so, he's now refusing to establish himself as an anti-Zionist. But I do think it's like, I do kind of agree in the idea that, like, I think he is quite obviously an anti-Zionist, but he's now too afraid to kind of back that with actual sort of any strong words to do so. So it's kind of like he's between a rock and a hard place almost, where he can't say he's an anti-Zionist, but if he doesn't say he's an anti-Zionist, then he has people on his side suddenly thinking that, oh, he doesn't agree with them anymore. So he kind of can't win in this scenario. And I think it's quite interesting to think that he's now in a position where now he's, like, as you say, no longer Labour leader. He still feels like he can't fully gauge and fully say his true views. It's almost like maybe he's afraid to do so.
Yeah, I think it's like he's acting like he's Labour leader, right? And I understand why he had to be more cautious. I mean, you are a leader of a party where there were people inside it who wanted to destroy you, of course. There were Zionists in the party, and you had to look like you were a united political party. It is different now, though. When you look at Zohran Mamdani in the US, he's not capitulating. He's being more aggressive. So I do wonder, is it because Jeremy Corbyn is a bit older and he's done political campaigning this way his entire life? Would it be almost too much to expect that Jeremy Corbyn then says, you know what, I want to bring more aggression to me. I want to bring more smears to me. And actually he's just trying to be risk averse.
Yeah, it's like he's almost at the opposite end of the swing, It's like Zohran Mamdani has come into the fray just at the time that, like, generally speaking, the public left agrees with this idea of being an anti-Zionist. And Corbyn has been in that space for so long, and now that the swing has happened, he's trying to go the opposite way to say, I don't want to be seen as too extreme, I don't want to be too aggressive, when we're all looking at him like a bit of aggression is what we need right now, because we've almost been too soft for too long and become like the weak left that's afraid to say what they think. And then you've got people like Zara who are like strong and will say what they think, trying to kind of pull Corbyn to, like, no, don't go too far the opposite way. We're here now. You need to catch up to us. And this just feels like potentially a misstep that he has done rather than an outlining of his actual view.
Yeah, I agree. But I think regardless of your thoughts on Jeremy Corbyn, the question I want to ask you is, in terms of the new party, your party, or whatever it's going to be called, do you worry this could be a major split? And look, compromise is key when you're working with other people, of course. But Israel was one topic where it's a red line, especially since the 7th of October, what Israel's done to Palestinians.
Yeah, I think the problem, again, and this is the left being the left, as they wonderfully are, is it would only take a little contentious issue like him misquoting himself in an instant moment like that in the park, where all of a sudden it becomes, oh, well, we have two different sides in the party now. The left can't agree with each other yet again. And we're now in a position where there's a Zara and there's a Corbyn split in the party, and then no one can agree with anyone. And we end up in this kind of weird vacuous space where there's no one else to take part in the conversation because the left has again eaten itself. So I do think there is a potential for this to become a contentious issue when potentially there isn't one.
Yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to this issue, it's understandable that people have a high amount of emotion in this, right? I completely get it. To speak sort of on behalf of myself, I would like if all the politicians I support said they were unequivocally anti-Zionist, right? I wish Jeremy Corbyn would say that. But is that a litmus test for me to vote for them? No. The policies that matter. So if I have someone who says, I'm an anti-Zionist, and someone says, oh, I don't really want to get into this debate, but their policies are exactly the same when it comes to banning weapons to Israel, when it comes to stopping sharing intelligence and aiding their intelligence, when it comes to supporting not just Israel, but like the wider neoliberal, neocon foreign policy. If all that is in line with leftist beliefs, then I don't personally need someone to say I'm an anti-Zionist. That's more of a plus. But I guess for other people, it might be a signal to say it's not necessarily the phrase or the fact they wouldn't say the phrase. It's when push comes to shove. But again, I would say Jeremy Corbyn his entire life has been on the side of the Palestinian people. He's not sold out or anything. So Yeah, but I don't want to tell people this is how you should think. I mean, I think people are absolutely right to have their criticisms. But I do find it strange. I mean, especially the tweet from I think it was a Human Rights Law, actually, where he said Jeremy Corbyn shouldn't lead the party. It's kind of like, we were calling for Jeremy Corbyn to start a new party for years.
Yeah.
And now he shouldn't start this party.
It's that. It's because I agree. It's like there's a purity test happening where maybe it doesn't need to be happening because you want people to be unequivocally clear on their views. But equally, I think it's like to suddenly say, well, throw him out of the party, then he's not good enough. It's so unhelpful to what we're trying to achieve. And I do agree, like, someone shouldn't have to explicitly say their views when time and time again they've proven it. You know, it's like if someone was to suddenly ask me my views on the royal family, it'd be like, well, do I have to say this again? Because you know my views on the royal family. I don't need to cover this subject yet again. So it's almost similar sort of test for him, that it's unhelpful in conversation to focus so harshly on this when he's proven himself for what he really thinks. We know what he really thinks. He just knows that his hands are tied by the mainstream media, so he feels scared to say it, I would say, is my kind of established view on that.
Yeah, I would say let's wait and see. If he starts turning around and saying, oh, actually, maybe we could send weapons to Israel. Oh, let's give them money. Then you can say, what the fuck, Jeremy? Which he won't do, by the way. But I tend to think actions do speak louder than words.
Agreed.
But let's leave that there and move on to our second story. Now, I do want to warn viewers, this next story I think is going to be quite distressing due to how trans people have been depicted in the media when it comes to this story. But we have to cover everything, and offensive content will be included, so I thought we'd give everyone a heads up. On the 27th of August, a 23-year-old from Minneapolis shot and killed 2 children with 19 injured at a church where they were attending Mass. The shooter has been identified as Robin Westman.
At this point, we know we have a total of 19 victims from this tragedy. 2 were young children, ages 8 and 10, that were sitting in the pews at Mass when they were shot and killed. They were pronounced deceased on the scene. There were another 14 children between the ages of 6 and 15 that were injured by gunfire. There were also 3 adults in their 80s that were parishioners here attending Mass that were also shot in this incident. The families of all of the children that have been affected have been notified. The coward that shot these victims took his own life in the rear of the church. That coward has been identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman. No prior criminal history. As to the weapons used to perpetrate this horrific attack, there was a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. All 3 had been lawfully purchased by the shooter. At this stage, we believe that the shooter had acted alone. There is no indication of other suspects directly involved in carrying out this attack.
Now, usually after a US shooting, the attention turns to gun control. Questions are asked as to why basic protections are not considered. This time, gun control has taken a back seat, and the media has focused on the shooter's identity. The Telegraph says, the transgender gunman who opened fire on praying children. Robin Westman scrawled Jew gas and for the children on weapons used in attack that killed 2. We have another one from the right-wing paper, New York Post. Demonic. Transgender maniac shoots up Catholic school morning mass, killing 2 kids. We have MAGA puppet, Charlie Kirk. He tweeted, breaking, Minneapolis school shooter Westman confessed was tired of being trans and wished they never brainwashed himself. Quotations. The evil perpetrated perpetrated on young people by the trans medical industry is something future generations will look upon with horror. Now, there has been some evidence that the shooter detransitioned, but that's irrelevant to the attack. Also, ironically, the right have tried to blame being trans for the violence, but they also admit that it's likely Robin detransitioned, so wouldn't that contradict their point? But suddenly, the identity of the person matters. You don't see the media with headlines such as, white straight male shooter kills. This is, of course, an attempt to make the identity of the person relevant, that being trans is an ideology, a violent one at that. But following the logic, maybe we should look at white men being an ideology? No? I thought this was a good tweet from Walter Masterson, a US comedian. A breakdown of mass shooters. Straight males, 98%. Straight white male, 57%. Trans, 0.13%. If you're focusing on the shooter being trans, just admit that you do not care about mass shootings, pretending you care about children being murdered because you clearly do not. But I don't weaponize identity. It's no more of a problem being transgender than it is being a white male when it comes to shooting. I think it's a mental health issue and by extension, a societal issue. But aside from identity, right-wing commentators follow the usual script that the shooter is left-wing. Independent journalist Brianna Morello tweeted, after Christian children were ambushed by a left-wing terrorist, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey addresses the real concern here. Hate being directed at the transgender community. Now, that tweet was in response to a Minneapolis mayor not to use this to discriminate against trans people, which is somehow controversial. And I bet you, my life, had the shooter been a straight white man and the mayor said, don't blame all straight white men, which I would agree with, Morello would praise the mayor. We have more. In the church, man, this is the battle. Christianity values versus ideologues that people support, or ideologies that people support. For how long people will let these left-wing ideologies walk around? Minneapolis mass shooting. The next one. The left push anger and mental health issues, or mental issues, with a trans agenda. Now you see the shooter of Minneapolis is, of course, a left-wing lunatic. We need to push the destruction of those who don't like us, like the Dems. Attached to the tweets is an image of the weapon with Kill Trump. That's the evidence that they are left-wing. But other images show the shooter is clearly not left-wing, and in my estimation, is a full-blown Nazi. So you can see on the screen, there's an image here with disgusting anti-Semitism that has been scrawled over the weapons. This next image, you can see written, it says 6 million isn't enough. Just utterly deplorable scripture. The shooter also had a manifesto in which they praised Hitler. Now, I came across this thread from Merrick, which I think is a very interesting point. The narrative around the Minneapolis shooter is particularly frustrating because it illustrates that so many people fail to grasp the ways in which traditional political identities are shifting in this new era of global fascism. The far right is increasingly made up of minorities and hates Donald Trump. We've known for years that Telegram is grooming all kinds of teens and young people into suicide missions to spread white supremacy, and we know increasingly that accounts on this platform pushing white nationalist and Nazi rhetoric are run by men who aren't white. It's true, and there are those who are trying to put people into neat little boxes, which typically come from the right wing. The assumption is that Robin, who is trans or who seem to have detransitioned, that's part of their identity and it must inform their politics. Trans people must be left-wing, but that's not the case. And in fact, as Merrick says, more and more minorities are moving to the right. How Trump won 1/5 of black men and nearly half of Latino men. Trump doubled his standing with black men from 4 years ago and secured nearly half, 47% of Latino men, according to exit polling. Now, you might say that the shooter hated Trump, so why bring up statistics that show Trump voters becoming more diverse? But the point I'm making is that being a minority doesn't automatically mean you don't lean right, and there is a clear shift happening. You can have a trans person who is a Nazi, and you can have a black and Hispanic person who's a full-blown MAGA supporter. Aidan, how might this affect trans people in the USA? What role do you think the media has played in this?
The immediate reaction to this is going to be from a lot of Americans who are already insanely misinformed about trans people as a basis. It's going to have an obvious negative impact on them, and it's going to create an environment in which it feels like you can just critique anyone for being trans because they might end up being a Nazi school shooter, which is obviously insane. It's obviously a mental thing to think. And I think the wider issue that nobody is talking about is the growth of this white supremacist take it all with me and end my life at the end of it mentality being like used by the right wing to propel their views, to propel the world they want to see, which is just everyone angry at each other because it benefits them. I think what's insane is the lack of conversation that's happening around how the right wing, who famously love to do this, they love to point the finger at other people and blame them for doing something when they're doing it themselves. They don't understand that these school shooters, these insane people wanting to do these horrific crimes, agree with them. The Republicans, like 9 times out of 10, they are in the same boat as them, but they want to point and say it's actually the left doing that. It's the left committing these atrocities because they know that they can convince their own voter base that that's what's going on. But anyone with a functioning frontal cortex will understand the fact that that is not what's happening. And so it's, again, using trans people as this thing to throw to the wolves to say, look at what this ideology does to people. Look how insane it makes. Because I think over time, as people have gotten more accustomed to the idea of trans people just simply existing, they've noticed that people aren't quite as angry as they'd like them to be. So they're trying to create a new argument that not only is transgenderism dangerous because they want to get into your bathrooms, but it's bad because they're Nazis as well, apparently. But they're left-wing Nazis. It's insane. It's beyond mental.
Yeah, and I think even though, like, I don't think putting people in boxes is helpful. Like, as we've seen from the graphics there, you have people who are moving to the right wing, voting for Trump, who are more diverse. But of course, it is still true that your identity can help shape your politics. So if you're a person of color, you're still more likely to be progressive or vote for the left party because you feel like that the left party is going to stand up for your rights. Like, that is still true. Which is why I want to ask you the question. I mean, what do you think it says that even either Trump supporters or even flipping Nazis who are ideologically opposed to the existence of trans people? Remember, one of the first victims of the Holocaust were trans people, can be trans themselves. Doesn't this suggest that there isn't a choice or an ideology?
I think it's interesting, yeah, because I agree, like putting people in boxes and assuming you're this, so you must vote and feel this way is not helpful to the conversation. But I think it is fascinating to see this kind of almost tricking people into voting against themselves. But we see it time and again. And if you extrapolate that to a class discussion, you have in the UK, we have the reform base being vastly working class people who are the reformists strictly opposed to, but they're voting for them. They're turkeys voting for slaughter, so to speak. And so I think what it is this crux of the issue of like the right wing and the white supremacists having this punk mentality. And punk is open to anybody, right? Anyone can be punk, everyone can be punk. But it's the punk thing of like, I'm going to go against what is I'm told I'm allowed to think. And I think what that does is it opens up for people who wouldn't typically be open to Nazi ideology, black people, trans people, gay people, anybody. They wouldn't typically be associated with Nazism. Because it's seen as the punk movement and it's against what people tell them they have to be, they go full head over heels into it. And that's creating this kind of vacuum for them to exist in where they are hated by the others around them, but they're still rebelling against what they're told they have to be. And I think that's what creates this kind of weird vacuum of having trans Nazis, which is it makes no sense for that to exist, but it does exist.
Yeah. And I think when we're bypassing the real conversation, which is what kind of society do we create when people go out and kill people, or it's school shootings, church shootings, mass shootings? Yeah. What kind of society have we created? And then when it comes up to the question of gun control, which usually is like the hot topic of these shootings, but not this time, that there is no gun control. Obviously, we know the reason behind that, the NRA, the money behind it. But like, we're not getting to the fundamental question. What we're seeing is a battle, right, between who can claim who as a victim or suspect. And the right wing, I think, do that the most. They play identity politics with something really serious. They say, it's a trans person. They must be, must have a crazy ideology. And it's like, it doesn't matter who commits these crimes. We need to look at the deeper level. We need to understand people are doing these crimes. It doesn't matter if you're trans or you're a straight white man. It's happening, right? There is no demographic that's specifically tied to this kind of crime. People are doing it. And if you don't want to talk about that, you're clearly not interested. You just want to put the blame on your political enemy, which to me is so abhorrent.
Oh, it's absolutely abhorrent. And it's again that thing of people wanting people to exist in boxes so they can more easily understand the world because they refuse to see things as they are, which is a bit more of a mishmash of how things operate. There's no one rule for how the world works. Not everyone's going to fit into a box, but I think a lot of times, and this happens on the left and the right, people refuse to see the world as a rainbow of existence. They want to say, no, you're this box, so you can't be that. And if you try to do that, we're going to use that against the other side. And it's this argument, this social issue we're having of both sides being able to getting arguments that are louder and louder and louder and bigger arguments. And now it's transgender school shooters, and it's the left wokerati trying to take milk away from children because they hate children, all of this stuff. Because nobody wants to have a discussion about the real base issue, which is no one can live comfortably anymore. Everyone universally is in pain, struggling with everything because society is not built for functional use anymore. But as long as we don't discuss that, that's okay, which is why these boxes are helpful to them, because you can more easily manipulate people when they believe in the boxes, when the boxes are non-existent.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good point that you made there. But let's move on. But before we go on to our final story, I just want to say, remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. Now, let's move on to our final story. And it's a positive one. I mean, when does that ever happen? I mean, I'm sorry, but we subject our viewers to such negative stories because there's so many terrible things happening in the world. So I'm very happy to bring you a small little light, a beacon of hope, maybe. The Co-op has launched a Palestinian beer. Tabay Brewing Co., a Palestinian microbrewery, has secured a national listing with the Co-op for its new collaboration with Scottish B Corp Brewgooder. The move comes as the retailer ends trade with Israeli suppliers following a member-backed policy on ethical sourcing. Brewed in Scotland in partnership with Tabay's brewmaster Maddie's Cowrie, Sun and Stone references the Middle Eastern climate and landscape. Brewgooder has pledged to produce the beer at zero profit, with proceeds supporting Tabay's community and the Disasters Emergency Committee. See, this is why people should support co-ops, a member-led decision. Now, this is the second move from the co-op which shows their solidarity with Palestine. Back in June, co-op announced that they would ban Israeli products from their stores after a motion passed that called on the board to show moral courage and leadership by taking all Israeli products off the shelves. I can tell you that I will 100% be buying their beer. Aidan, I mean, first of all, do you drink beer, and would you pick up a pack for yourself?
Yeah, I'm a big beer fan. I mean, people might have seen I had a video go big where I had 6 pints and spoke about Brexit. So yeah, big fan of beer, and will be picking up a pack. I'm very pro this.
Oh, have we? We've got a bit of a it's frozen my end. Yeah.
Happily.
You're back.
We're back.
We're back. Sorry. Yeah. Just start from the top
It's all
again.
good. I'll start where I was. So I was saying that I think it's a wonderful use of using the weapon of capitalism against them, so to speak, and saying yeah, we're gonna sell a beer. We're gonna grow this idea that you can be pro. You could be pro this support of Palestine, and in its I think it's a phenomenal move. I'm going to be supporting. I'm going to be getting some beer.
Yeah, and the thing is though, I don't even know what it's going to taste like, but I'm like, I'm buying some. I mean, to be fair, like when it comes to me, I drink beer. I'm one of those. Should I say beer snob? I don't know if I want to say snob, but I do like my ales, my IPAs and stuff.
Me too.
I'm not really bad. And I don't go to Brewdog because they suck, right? But I do tend to choose beer based on how it looks on the can, because some of the artwork is fantastic. Yeah. You know, I appreciate that not everyone in our viewership drinks beer or drinks alcohol, but if you drink like these sorts of beers, I tend to choose if they've got really nice, colourful artwork, I'm like, oh, it's probably a good beer. So if I'm going to choose beer based on colours and artwork, I'm certainly going to choose beer in terms of solidarity with Palestine.
100%. I mean, I'm the same. I full hook, line, and sinker. Like, if I'm in a pub and there's a beer with an IPA called like Old Man's Foot, I'm like, well, I'm obviously going to try that. And so I'm that easily convinced to try different IPAs and stuff. So I will 100% be open to trying this, because like if there's a good reason and it's nice beer, I'm doubling down. That's fantastic.
Yeah, but I think this brings an important conversation about co-ops. Of course, this is kind of socialism in action. I know the co-op is not full-blown socialist enterprise, but this is what happens when you have a level of democracy within businesses that often not just moral decisions are made, but the correct decisions are made too. And of course, this is the second time co-op has made a good decision. Many times they've actually done some pretty good decisions, but obviously they boycotted Israeli and 25 other nations, including Iran and other countries that have terrible human rights abuses. Actually, when Nigel Farage wins power and we leave the ECHR, I mean, they probably have to ban all of our goods as well, because our human rights have been stripped. But yeah, no, it's. I think it's good when you have a level of accountability and democratic participation, which yields good results. It's socialism.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's socialism. It proves, sort of. Yeah, it kind of proves again. It's like that kind of idea of like. I think again, it's a perfect idea that hopefully more people learn about, this idea of like democratizing the workplace, democratizing the places that you shop, democratizing the economy, because it's like we have democracy in our voting and the way we live our lives, supposedly, but people, I don't think, are even aware of the concept of being able to democratize every aspect of your life. And so hopefully little moves like this, little news grabbers like Co-op having a Palestinian beer through votership in their company, allowing it to happen, will inform people that this is an option. It can happen. It can work. Like, I know for a fact, like where I work, I help run this company I'm at. It's very much it's a voting system. We decide what happens and what step we take. We're only a small company, but it's that kind of idea of you got to build it from the ground and have things in place that allow people to understand that there's something that can happen. It doesn't have to be this kind of top-down system. It's very easily controllable by us.
Yeah. And I believe it was Richard Wolff. It might have been Richard Wolff. He says, look, we say we love democracy. We vote every 5 years, at least for national politics. But we didn't extend democracy where we spend most of our lives, or waking lives. And that's work. And I think the idea is so alien to people, because they're like, well, no, I'm supposed to be told what I need to wear, how much I'm paid, what I have to do. I'm supposed to be controlled in the work environment, because we have democracy, because we vote for a political party every 5 years, even though that political party often sort of doesn't really change much, take around the edges, but it's really the uni party. It's the same economic system. You're voting for Thatcher, whether it's red, blue, or now turquoise. Whereas true democracy is in the workplace. I mean, that's the beginnings of socialism. And anytime we speak about the co-op, I always love to go on a rant about socialism, because this is why socialism is good for you. It's good for your heart and soul, and it's good for you when you want to choose your type of beer. Which exactly as soon as it goes on sale, I would be picking up a pack.
Precisely.
Anyway, that concludes the stories, but of course that's not the end of the show. Let's go to our producer for your comments. We've got Ben as our producer. How are you doing?
Hello. I hope you are all having a lovely time. Lovely to see so many of you in the chat. And people have been extremely generous tonight, I've noticed. Let's go through, first of all, some of the super chats and gifts. So first of all, we had Guitar Guy gifting 5 Turn Left memberships. I would usually go through each of the members, but I won't tonight. I'll just say thank you to Guitar Guy. You are absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And James Holmes, similarly, has gifted 5 Turn Left memberships. Legend. Absolutely. You've no idea, guys, how much this helps keep us going. When we go out and do stuff, when we go, like, I think we're looking at going to TWT, World Transformed, we're only able to pay for that stuff because of your support. Like, it has a big impact. And I know everybody says that on YouTube, but it really does. Specs Bean Farmer gifted another 5 Turn Left memberships. Legend. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely amazing. We had Les Watts, who donated £5 and said, I am willing to cut Corbyn some slack for being guarded in his answers given the history. I am still fully behind your party. Yeah, I think we can get into that, but just bear that in mind. And my pal Footfoot, with a very generous £20.
Wow.
I know. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely huge donation. America has a history of gun massacres by right-wing idiots, but the media headlines are feeding into this reactionary far-right messaging. We have to defend trans people because they're just people. They deserve our defense. I don't know how anyone could disagree with that. That is spot on, like just top tier. Love that.
Only ghouls and horrible people would disagree with that really non-controversial statement.
Exactly. Yes. Rachel, our good friend Rachel Atwood, donated $5 and said people seem to believe that the Zidian cult are representative of the wider trans community and not just a small fringe group who are now in prison. It's always the story, isn't it? Taking a small group of people and focusing on the bad. It's exactly the same conversation I was having with Patrick Christis last night on GB News. I was saying literally this exact point that it's always about like taking a bunch of anecdotes. They're doing the same thing to refugees right now, right? It's a bunch of anecdotes about how a refugee raped somebody here or committed an offense here, and this is supposed to represent the whole community. And we also have Third Eye Blind, who donated 10 Turn Left memberships.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, people have been so generous tonight, and we really do appreciate it. It is absolutely, it's just so essential to what we do. But anyway, let's go on and get through some of the comments. So Ben Francis says, and I feel like this was a feeling that was very much in the chat. Who cares what he calls himself? He strongly opposes arming Israel. Of course, this is Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn strongly opposes arming Israel and its war. Don't get too puritanical. You just come across as a purist, right? And I feel like that was a general sort of like feeling in the chat. I did notice that there were people who were sympathetic to Corbyn's position, such as Michael, again, says Corbyn has millions of pounds against him trying to smear him, or had millions of pounds against him trying to smear him. How was he supposed to know who is pushing a camera in his face, asking these questions, especially with all these auditors? I feel like there's a lot of sympathy for Corbyn's position. Aximal Crackers, excuse me, who is Jewish, so I wanted to highlight their comment, said, but the US is a more aggressive political climate. That's just a fact in comparison to, for the comparison to Bernie Sanders, between Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn, and Jeremy Corbyn being too hesitant to challenge the Zionism line. I believe that was in relation to. But the one criticism came from an angle I wasn't expecting, because Pittsburgh said Corbyn bowed to the Zionists when he was Labour leader. You give these bastards an inch, they take a mile. Corbyn is soft, weak at best, and an asset of the UK state at worst. I wanted to get your guys' sort of take on that, because we've got two slightly different ways of approaching this.
Before we do, I think we've had another donation, and we have to bring it up, and it's actually quite insane. If you want to bring that up.
Yes, of course. Let me go to that. Wow. And oh my God. Yeah. Third Eye Blind donated £50.
So
wow.
Workers unite against the establishment. My
and that
God.
Message as well. It may be a £50 donation, but that message is priceless. It's all about workers uniting against the establishment, no matter how much they want to distract us with refugees and immigrants, right? It's about the workers coming together, who, by the way, refugees and immigrants are our workers too. We unite with them against the oligarchs. So thank you. I really appreciate that comment. Yeah, let's go back to that one. I didn't mean to sidetrack that comment. I felt like we should have. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been wrong of me not to have brought that up. So just reminding you where we were a moment ago. There's a lot of sympathy for Corbyn, but Pittsburgh did say that he gave too much ground, and he's. And I have some sympathy for this position, I'm not going to lie. He might be too soft and giving too much ground for the movement going forward. What do you guys think of that as a position?
Aiden, you want to take this one?
Sure, yeah, I can lead on that. I think the idea that he's too soft is one I've felt. I feel he's too soft sometimes, and also just not... You hear him say something and you think you're just giving them what they want by saying that. I equally think it's incredibly harsh, though, because... like it or not, Corbyn is arguably the biggest voice of the left in the UK. right? Whatever you think about him on how left he really is, he is the biggest voice of the left in the media, amongst people's kind of first thought of the left in this country. And so he's a tool that we have and an asset we need to make use of. So agreed, like, yes, he can be too soft, and he gave them an inch, and they definitely took a mile with him. I think to cast them aside because of that, it would not be helpful to us, because it's like we'd have to start again and try and find someone else to build up this kind of common knowledge of. But then equally, I guess on the opposite side of what I've just said is perhaps he's too baked into people's brains as a no-no. And so that's why it's worth maybe not following him and thinking of him as this representative of the left. It's kind of, it's something we have to figure out, I guess. I don't really have an answer for where I land on that discussion.
Yeah. I mean, I think Pittsburgh makes some interesting points. I'm with you on the first half of your comment. I don't agree that, like, at worst he's an asset of the UK, because the UK absolutely, and I'm talking about the UK state, I'm talking about the mainstream media and the establishment, were quaking in their boots even when Jeremy Corbyn just said he was going to run as Labour leader. And this was based on an anti-austerity ticket, right? You know, the debate around Israel-Palestine wasn't nowhere near as big as it is today. So in 2015, largely, Jeremy Corbyn's main thrust of his campaign was, let's not do spending cuts. And you saw how the mainstream media and the establishment within, like, inside and outside the Labour Party melted down at that. So I don't think he was ever a UK asset. But I think that his position as Labour leader, I try to give him some grace. When he was Labour leader, you're not leader of a party that is behind you. You are leader of in Jeremy's position, you're leader of a party where you have the leader of the opposition and the office there. You have the membership. Okay, very powerful. But unfortunately, between that, you've got arguably the most powerful thing, which is the machine, the Labour machine. And that was squarely controlled by the right wing of the party, the Blairites, New Labour. So Jeremy Corbyn, despite having 600,000 members, was still stuck in a very difficult place. And he had to deal with a deeply, deeply terrible, awful PLP. So I think he capitulated. You could say it's soft, right? I think he was he obviously believed that if I capitulate a little bit, so the IHRA definitions, for example, that people like Margaret Hodge were like, okay, thank you. I guess I wouldn't say Jeremy was soft. I think he underestimated how bad his detractors were. Some of the bastards in the party were like, we don't care if you're going to capitulate on this particular thing. We're going to push even further. Now, I would say that this, you know, Jeremy Corbyn had 5 years or 4 years in the role. He would have seen that from the first 6 months. And I guess he probably should have turned around and been more aggressive at that point. But there was another factor that he had to contend with, which is, you know, his leadership style. You know, the first shadow cabinet was very broad, had Hilary Benn in there. It was from the left, centre, and the right. He had right-wingers in his cabinet, and he said, I want to be very open. I want to have a discussion, right? It was building politics on consensus. But if he had turned around halfway through and basically purged all these people, which, by the way, I think he still should have done, the media would have then said, oh, see, he is a Stalin. This is a Stalinist purge. Now, one could say, fuck what the media says, but I would also say 50, 60%, maybe 70% of what caused Jeremy Corbyn and the left-wing project in the Labour Party to fail was the media. The difference here, though, and this is a bit more instructive, is he's now outside the party. He doesn't have these levers which are pulling him back. But Aidan, you're probably right. He's campaigning this way for so long, it's kind of entrenched. And he is quite risk-averse. He doesn't actually want controversy. Controversy finds him. He doesn't want to find it. Zara Sultana, who's younger, probably has got more energy up for the fight. She's like, fuck it, I'm an anti-Zionist. And maybe that's what this new party needs. But I think it would be wrong to completely write Jeremy Corbyn off and say, well, fuck him now, because that's crazy. And you're right, Aidan. Like, he's still probably the biggest figure on the left. The left still is quite tight to Jeremy Corbyn. So unless we build institutions and more people power, we're still going to need Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, I think that's right. I also, sorry to interrupt, Cog. Just quickly on the point on that. I just
go.
think as well that Zara would be, is the kind of heir to the throne. And so we need to find a point where we transition that and we move. And Corbyn is the one that breaks the gate, but Zara is the one that fills the field, you know?
I 100%
Anyway, sorry.
agree with that. 100%.
Yeah,
agree.
no, very, very well said. There's a lot of nuance required for this discussion, as there is for the other discussion, the discussion about the trans shooter. And I think that Jim Speak was entirely correct. Jim Speak tweeted. Jim Speak commented this about Walter Masterson's tweet. Now, Walter Masterson is brilliant, but he needed to be really careful when he was saying that 0.13% of mass shooters are trans. He did need to put 0.13 because that actually. Yeah, I think that's a really solid point. But I wanted to highlight a couple of the comments from our trans friends on that, particularly Natalie, who said that people who detransition are still trans generally. Most detransitioners are because society makes transitioning too hard. 100% agree, and the studies back that up. I'm not just going, oh, this is a trans person, so they must, they must necessarily know what they're talking about. Although Natalie does, of course. I'm saying highlighting that particularly because it is so true based on the data as well. And Leo makes the very good point. Leo, who I believe is also trans, said exactly, Natalie. Also, the fact that numbers have to stop. That people have to stop HRT for medical reasons are counted in those numbers, inflating the number of detransitioners. There's just this very big thing about the disconnect between identity and politics. And Edward Sexby rightly pointed out that Ernst Röhm, the head of the brown shirts, the Sturmabteilung SA in the Nazi Party, was gay and was eventually persecuted by Hitler in the Night of the Long Knives for it in June 1934, if I remember correctly. But I'm just whizzing through some of these last comments. I did want to. I don't think we'll have time to speak about it, but I did want to acknowledge Thea, who I believe is also a trans person, saying, got to love Zara's post about transphobia. Very complimentary about Zara. Yeah, one of their MPs, the new Your Party MPs, did send a transphobic tweet, and there's a lot of question at the moment about how strongly they're going to come out in favor of trans rights. And I totally, I am with you, trans people. They need to come out strong and state their position very clearly, because it's trans people have just been betrayed too many times on this. And what I will do is...
I think it was Adnan Hussein.
Adnan Hussein, yeah, I think that's the person that I think of. I saw that name mentioned in the chat.
The worry I have for... let's say Your Party for now. The worry I have is that, look, the independent MPs and the independent alliance was largely on the basis of Gaza. I do ignore when the media say, oh, it's all sectarian politics. Now, of course, the independent MPs, their thrust was on Gaza. Of course, people voted for them because they were also sick and tired of the Conservatives and the Labour Party, who were bad on people's material conditions, right? But I would say the big thrust of it is on Gaza. And the issue we have now is some of these independent MPs, we're not sure if they're socially progressive. I don't need an MP that agrees with me 100% of the time. But if there's a worry that you might throw communities under the bus, what does that mean in terms of being part of this new party? Great, you can work together in Parliament when standing against Israel and Gaza because they're independent MPs. I mean, it's Jeremy and 4 other MPs. It's not a political party. It's just the independent alliance. Fine. But if there's going to be a formation of an official political party, and we've already assumed that all these independent MPs are going to be in there, when actually some of them may be social conservative, I think there's going to be an issue there. The one thing, the saving grace of this is if this new party is fully democratic, right, then their views will not be able to be heard, or at least their views won't go very far. They won't have positions in the party, high positions. They won't be calling the shots because there's a democratic mandate. But it remains to be seen, I suppose.
Yeah, did you want to get a quick word on this, Aidan? Go on.
Yeah, I also think that what the issue we have as well on the left, and people for a long time it was this secret anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism that was in the left, but in the left has a real issue with hidden transphobia and these kind of I'm forgetting the word for the feminists that are anti-trans.
TERFs.
TERFs, that's the word, TERFs. The hidden TERFs in the left, so to speak. And I think it's a really important moment for Zara and Jeremy and anyone else involved in this to stand their flag in the ground, their trans flag, and to be like, yes, we support this, we're pro this. Because I think it's also an interesting thing because your opinions on the freedom of trans people underpins your opinion on a whole other set of
Yep.
things, because it's your views on misogyny, your views on gender, your views on its play in society. Because ultimately, anyone with a real clear view on this understands that the freedom of trans people is the freedom of us all. And so I would hope that they would stick their flag in the ground and be pro and support the trans community. But it remains to be seen how they move forward with this point.
Very
I think
well.
Zara is continuing to show how based she is, though.
Yep, absolutely. Cool. I think
Shout
we're
out
going to
Zara.
call the comments section there, and we'll head over back to you guys to end the show. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Ben Cog. It's still kind of strange calling you Ben, but you're a celebrity now. You're on the telly box. Again, thank you so much for the comments, and thank you everyone to join. Thank you, Aiden/Goatmail. You were a fantastic guest.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great. It's always great to chat. It's always good to put the world to rights.
And also putting the world to rights and talking about celebrity, you have gone viral twice now for the second time. If you want to explain to our audience who haven't seen it, but I bet a lot of our audience have seen it.
Yeah. Like last year during the Euros, I was in a pub watching England play, came out, got street interviewed, asked my questions on if I think immigrants are important to the UK, what I think about Brexit, what I think about reform. And I think I answered it succinctly, and that has seemed to have penetrated into a lot of places and people, not in a weird way. And it seems to have got into a point where a lot of millions of people have seen it. So yeah, it's been a bit of a mad last sort of 3 weeks where my following has kind of doubled everywhere, and I'm getting a lot of attention, and it's strange.
But you're getting attention on based opinions, and we're here for it.
Yeah.
You know?
I'll take it.
It's high time the left start winning in areas. But of course, that is all we have time for. And thank you again to our viewers. Thank you to the super chats and YouTube memberships. It's been really, really generous tonight. And as Ben was saying, it is so important, the work we are trying to build. And the money you give absolutely does help. We're going to events. We're buying equipment. It makes a huge difference. But if you don't give any money, that's also absolutely fine. Just being here, watching. We've got a Discord set up. Someone can link it in the comment section. Seeing familiar faces. It's absolutely fantastic. We're building an amazing community here as we're building a socialism, because we're trying to take on the oligarchs. Remember to like the stream. And again, if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you next time.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.